We Were, where we revisit the past to understand how the ebb and flow of popular culture shapes the way we are. Only on The Podcaster.
Hi, and a very, very warm welcome to The Way We Were. This is Reema. And I thought it would be interesting to put things in perspective at the end of 2023 and just figure out exactly where we are. I feel it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that 2023 was the year of Shah Rukh Khan. Think about it. He started the year with Pathaan, which was a 1,050-something crore hit, and followed it up in September with Jawaan, which was another 1,148 crore box office smash. With his third film, Dunki, which is about to release on December 21st, he may just put a massive bow on what promises to be his most successful year in show business. At the age of 58, yes, at the age of 58, he has also reinvented himself as an action hero, who, unlike the protagonist of Animal, is not a heedless killing machine. He has a larger purpose. And what is that purpose? To save the idea of India, perhaps, or remind us that we are more than our differences. As Dimple Kapadia's character tells Pathaan in one pivotal moment, तुम वो पिघला हुआ सोना हो जो सब टूटे हुए टुकड़ों को जोड़ के रखेगा. What she means perhaps is that only someone who has survived a trial by fire is up to such a momentous task. And then it hits you with a sudden clarity that there is one thing that Shah Rukh knows perhaps better than any of his peers. And it's just how to bring people together. That, I think, is his superpower. On Karan Johar's talk show many years ago, I remember Jaya Bachchan saying something about both Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh. She said that both of them have something inexplicably extraordinary. What she had perhaps meant was that this quality is not just talent. There have been better actors than them, but how many of them have consumed our imagination like these two did when they first started out? Remember Shah Rukh in Fauji? I do. In a sprawling cast of some good and some terrible actors, this was the face you could not forget. The floppy hair, the bouncing fireball energy that just chewed up the scenery and everyone in it. There was an element of insanity in his earliest movie roles. Whether he was stalking Deepa Sahib, Maya Mem Saab, or serenading a messed up nation in Oh Darling, Ye Hai India, and stopping the traffic with a cry of Oh Tabahi, Ah Tabahi, It's hard to forget Shah Rukh, who banged his head against a wall in Deewana and screamed, "Mohabbat ho gayi hai mujhe, mohabbat ho gayi hai mujhe." The Shah Rukh who ran like a little demon on the streets of Mumbai while Sunny Deol chased him in Dar. And the climax where he had really broken his shoulder and channeled that agony, that pain to let out a lacerating scream. That was part longing, part pain, and part rage. That face of his, it's still painted in gaudy colors on the back panels of auto rickshaws. He was almost manic in his hunger to show us that he meant business, and by God, he was here to stay, and he did. It was in Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, I think, that this energy began to be domesticated in the interest of a wider connect with the audience. From a raw rebel straining against convention, Shah Rukh became the upholder of tradition, the good son, the committed lover. And then in the films that followed, he became a doting husband, caring father. Many years ago, while writing about him, I mentioned that the fire we first fell in love with, in Shah Rukh, had perhaps been doused out of existence. Because instead of the grungy, sweaty, darkly enticing stranger dressed in ill-fitting jackets and scruffy shirts, he had now become the endorser of brands. And so this is what I wrote. Both Bachchan and Shah Rukh began their careers wanting to be acknowledged as actors, as bona fide players in an industry full of has-beens and would-have-beens. They wanted to be unforgettable, indelible. They wanted us to love them, lust for them, mourn them, root for them. They wanted us to pause, catch a breath and look at them and then never look away. Well, we kept our side of the bargain. They still are compulsively watchable, but the edges seem to have worn off and have been rounded off. They are now savvy businessmen running empires, and they are brand ambassadors who can sell anything under the sun. The mad gleam in SRK's eyes that promised us hell and heaven has now been conquered by market forces. He is no longer a visibly hungry actor. He is a commodity up for consumption. In trying to appeal to award juries and critics and audiences around the world, his directors are confusedly casting him in roles where he's either over-stylized and overconfident or diluted and watered down. As you can see, I was wrong. I was utterly, completely wrong. Because right from the first time he says Zinda hai in his introduction scene in Pathaan with his blood-streaked face crisscrossed by shadows, you know he can never be summed up by any of us. And that he's not saying this line to just critics and foes who have routinely written him off, but to forces that have tried to bring him down to his knees in the last few years. Jaya Bachchan was perhaps right that he is inexplicable and possibly has something that none of us can conquer with our opinions, douse with our hate, or shrug at with our indifference or ignore. Even when he is in excruciating pain, being targeted unfairly, watching his son being hauled off to jail, and quietly watching a toxic ecosystem painting him as an anti-national or just a Muslim who must be shown his place, he just stays quiet and doesn't really let you see what exactly he's going through. I remember last year when he went to pay his respects at Lata Mangeshkar's funeral, a systematic network of trolls began sharing a clip accusing him of spitting on the late singer's body. He didn't say a word. Not then, not when his son was put behind bars and accused of being part of an international drug cartel. Not when fake videos of an Aryan Khan lookalike were circulated to show that he was unsanskari enough to be in public. And not when a leading newspaper repeatedly used headlines like Shah Rukh Khan's son, Aryan Khan's drug case, or Aryan Khan and Ananya Pandey's drug case. However, a one-liner like "Bete ko haath lagane se pehle baap se baat kar" brought the house down in Jawaan. Whether the line was rooted in his own anger, we don't know. But as the film critic said after the release of Pathaan, and I quote, "They messed with the wrong superstar." They did. Because SRK is not his religion, and the kind of emotional connection he has forged with millions of people across the world cannot be messed around with. It is something, as Jaya Bachchan hinted, you cannot put a finger on. You cannot sum up this connection in words. It just is. And Shah Rukh is well aware of it. That is why he took on the beaters without a trace of aggression in Kolkata before Pathaan's release and said, "मैं और आप सब लोग जो positive हैं, जिंदा हैं." And as it turns out, he was right. Weeks before its release, when Pathaan was being attacked for multiple reasons, one of which was the claim that its profits would go to the flood-hit citizens of Pakistan, even people who usually don't watch films and remain apolitical on social media had had enough of toxic narratives being driven by bots and IT cell trolls. A dear friend who is in her 70s posted this on her social media timeline. If you hate Pathaan, you probably didn't read Kabuliwala in school. I haven't watched a Hindi film in theatres in over 5 years, but even I went alone on a Thursday afternoon to watch it. So did another friend with her colleagues. And there was not a hint of hate in the multiplex where I watched the film. The hall was packed with what was once known as a family audience, and I felt I was back in the 70s and the 80s when watching a blockbuster was a shared human experience. Around me were women in saris and hijabs with children and spouses, young couples, college students, and even a few grandparents being guided carefully to their seats. The national anthem then came on and everybody stood instantly. Memories of policemen beating a few young boys in Delhi and telling them to sing the anthem flashed before my eyes, along with the nightmare of a disabled person in 2017 who was heckled and abused because he could not stand when the anthem played in a theatre. The anthem, however, ended without any untoward incident because it was Republic Day. Someone also shouted Bharat Mata Ki Jai, a loud cheer went up. I thought of Tagore, who wrote both Kabuliwala and the national anthem. And he had said that the fierce self-idolatry of nation worship was not the goal of human history. But the energy in the theatre somehow did not feel jingoistic that day. It was joyful. And there was genuine emotion at the sight of a larger-than-life Tiranga fluttering on the screen. The film then began, and beneath the veneer of no-holds-barred entertainer, there came rushing back multiple reminders of the way we were once. And there were moments that deeply resonated, as when Deepika's Rubai asks Shah Rukh Khan's Pathaan, Musalman ho kya? This question mark has been forcibly placed against Shah Rukh's name in the past few years, as if he's nothing more than his surname. And he gives a perfect answer in the film. He says he doesn't know who he is, but the nation has taken care of him, and so he'll take care of it like a good son. The cathartic response to his films this year is in defiance of the propaganda that has sought to attack not just Shah Rukh, but the joyous and undivided spirit of Hindi cinema. It is in defense of a film industry that has immense cultural and economic power globally, but has been repeatedly accused of being a drug cartel, a suicide gang, a factory of secular and anti-national propensities. Its baiters need no proof to suggest that Deepika Padukone is a Muslim and actually working for the ISI, and that Shah Rukh's father was not a freedom fighter, and that Amir Khan's covert mission is to undermine Hinduism. Even though the lines "हमने मोहब्बत की है इस दिल के अलावा किसी से भी ना हमने इजाजत दी है," even though these lines are sung by SRK in Pathaan, I think they seem to echo the sentiment of those who are claiming their version of India back from the hate mongers. In cinema halls, at least, I think. Millions of Indians have bought tickets to films they were not supposed to watch. As a friend rather optimistically put it, India is fighting back. Well, I would say it's rediscovering itself. Shah Rukh Khan, however, doesn't make overtly political statements. He doesn't say much about the state of the country, but his work speaks for him. A few years back, he worked either by chance or with intention in Yash Chopra's Veer Zara and Karan Johar's My Name is Khan. In a post 9/11 world, he perhaps felt the need to find a thread of humanity, amid the prevailing discourse of hate and fear. In fact, I remember asking him at a press conference around that time, around Veer Zara was released, that if this film was his attempt to build bridges. And he was rather flippant in his answer. Because Shah Rukh Khan will not let you make him answer a question that his cinema can answer for him. My Name is Khan, for all its flaws, also had something important to show. A man so driven by the need to find and display humanity that what people think of him or his religion melts into insignificance. And there was that love story between a Hindu woman and a Muslim man, and it was radical then and even more so now. A story that Shah Rukh has lived and not just narrated. In Chak De 2, he was not a majoritarian male endorsing the agenda of those in power. He was a man hounded because of his faith. This was also the film where Khan possibly was addressing his Muslim identity in a nation, becoming increasingly obsessed with Pakistan and toxic nationalism. Race too, if you remember, for all its moral ambiguity, had one thing sorted. Its bootlegger turned messiah was a profiteer but not a writer. In one scene, he addresses the tragic, politicized polarization of communities by opening langars in 4 mahallas after a spate of riots and says, "When I didn't discriminate between religions while doing business, why would I do it now?" And the singularly most memorable line in the entire film comes when he says, "मैं धंधा करता हूँ पर धर्म का धंधा नहीं करता." And this is what sets Shah Rukh apart from many of his peers who have conveniently climbed on to the bandwagon of opportunism. That one of the country's most beloved superstars dare to back a film like this shows that Khan is supremely aware of the world he lives in. And in his own way, he addresses it the only way he can, like I said before, through his work. In Dear Zindagi, he plays Dr. Jahangir Khan in a far more neutral context. He's here a man of knowledge, empathy, and compassion, and that he chose to underplay his superstardom and stay in character perhaps shows that as an actor he now knows the importance of brevity and of making a point without seeming to make it. His appearance on David Letterman's My Next Guest a few years back also never addressed the obvious questions about the politics of identity in an increasingly divided country. But there was a subtext. That is something we'll talk about some other time. But let's just say that he has come a long way from the time when he was a young, unabashedly honest and occasionally brash debutante. There's a video of him somewhere at a Holi party dancing with his young wife in defiance of the industry rules where star wives were never seen and heard. And he was obviously a rebel then, and he may have conformed to some extent, but he still manages to make a point when he most needs to make it, in defiance of prevailing narratives. He's also become an actor who knows that his platform matters and that what he says or doesn't say matters too. I cannot emphasize this enough that what Shah Rukh represents is not just cinematic. He represents an idea of India that is still rooted in love. An India that is like an unfolding screenplay, full of heartbreak and the loss of innocence and flaws, but hopeful ultimately of finding a thread of cohesion and its own joyful ever after. This year belongs to him, I think, because with his films he has made us feel things we hadn't felt in a long time. Hope and joy and the thrill of seeing an underdog win. Most of all, he has reminded us that we are a nation bound together by our love for the movies and something more, our love for each other.
The Way We Were, where we revisit the past to understand how the ebb and flow of popular culture shapes the way we are. Only on The Podcaster.